What are we gonna do when we get back?
What are we gonna do when we get back?
I take a shower and hit the rack.
Take a shower and hit the rack.
Welcome to Charlie Mike. If you're a combat veteran with an entrepreneurial bug and want to know what highly successful combat veteranpreneurs are doing to transform their sacrifice and experience to create their visual reality, then this is dedicated to your inspiring and fulfilling future. And now your host, Dwayne Paro.
No way, gotta run, feet, lots of fun.
Invest in Yourself ebook is my free gift to you for listening to the show and becoming part of the CO Nation. To receive your free gift, please go to landmarklifecoaching.com. Thank you for joining us on this episode. There are so many veterans with the core strengths to become successful entrepreneurs and continue to make a huge positive impact on our country. Here we highlight the amazing successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Combat veterans, for the purpose of this show, are soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen who have served the United States in wars, campaigns, and in theater on foreign soil or hostile waters. Our guest today is Brandon Buttrey. Brandon is a 10-year combat veteran from Houston, Texas, and is now producing a brand new line of outstanding coffee that reflects some of the experiences individuals have while serving this great country of ours. Veterans, active duty military, L.E.Os, public safety, and military supporters alike will be able to enjoy the animated depictions of each roast while consuming the best coffee they have ever had. The idea came to him while teaching his field to urban medical integration class. Brandon said, "I provide coffee for my classes and have a donation bucket. There were always a lot of contributors there, so I figured that there is a huge market." Brandon reflected on his time in the service when coffee was held in high regard just to be able to function. He knew that if he designed a military, veteran-friendly coffee brand, that he could have some serious customers. But that's not all. All of the proceeds go back into the company, with a portion being donated to charitable veteran organizations. All right, Brandon, welcome to the show, and thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, man, good to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you tell our loyal listeners all about your journey from a veteran to an entrepreneur. So before we get into your entrepreneurial experience, could you give our audience an overview of your military experience?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm actually from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and my father was a Marine, so most of my life, I lived a veteran life, I can't say, military/veteran. So when we moved back to Missouri, after me being gone for so long, I kind of knew that really wasn't the place I was going to live. After high school, I had my certified nurse aide license. I was ready to go somewhere outside of Cape, and I went to the military. I asked the Marines, "Hey, what do you guys got medical?" And they sent me to the Navy. I thought they were joking, but they were serious. So I went over there, and I actually swore in September 7th, 2001. And September 11th happened. Didn't really change anything. I didn't care. I signed up. And I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, October of 2001. After that was Corps School in 2002 in about January. And then through there, just started my career. I had a shore duty at the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery in Washington, D.C. After that tour was up, I went with Infantry Marines, a unit called Anti-Terrorism Battalion. I thought that was like something high speed. I'm like, ooh, I want to join that, So I went to Camp Lejeune, joined up with those guys. I was fortunate enough to be attached with a state platoon. Did a lot of cool stuff with snipers. If you're not really familiar with what a state platoon is, did training in Israel, did counterterrorism sniper training. Went to Operational Emergency Medical School, which is like, you're flaying pigs open and working on, live tissue. And then I did my first deployment. I was in the Iranian province for 8 months, called Camp Ashraf in Iraq. I came back, and no more than 2 weeks after that, I was told I was selected to be General Gaskin's personal security detail. So then we trained up for that. More high-speed stuff. They even sent me to Blackwater. I thought that was really cool. Before, of course, they had to get rid of Blackwater. prepped myself, and then 6 months after I had got back from my first deployment, I went out to Fallujah, Iraq for a year. And, it wasn't so much that it was a rough deployment. I just felt like, man, that's a year out of my life. But that kind of summed up my SEAL duty with the Marines. I had re-enlisted at that time, and my father had moved to San Antonio, so I wanted to be closer to him. So I got orders to Corpus Christi, Texas. I'm like, okay, I got 4 years. I can make some rank. I can get some college in. I'll be good. Well, I got there, and the first place they put me was in pediatrics. I thought that was kind of funny. I'm like, here's this combat vet coming in, or combat military corpsman coming in from a year deployment in Fallujah, and they're sticking me in pediatrics, but it was whatever. I had made E5, and at that time I met my wife. She got pregnant, and it probably wasn't a few months after we found out she was pregnant that they augmented me with the Marines to go to Afghanistan. And I really wasn't too happy about that. I knew it was going to interfere with some personal life, that it was going to go over the time where I would actually see my son born. So there's really nothing I could do about that. Just do what you're told. You're in a contract. And I went. It was not a very good deployment. We were in the Helmand province, and basically this was everything that we geared to invade Marja at that time. This is 2009 into 2010. My son was born, but it was due to emergency reasons, emergency C-section. He was premature in the NICU, and there was nothing that could be done to get me back home. So it hit me pretty hard. So when I got back, I pretty much vowed to my son and my wife that I will never let this happen again. And I knew with the motivation and determination and everything I had at the military, during my military time, I could do something on the outside and be very successful. Mm-hmm. And it's that 10-year mark. Okay, I'm reaching my 10-year mark. What do? Do I stay in and do 10 more years, or do I stay in, do 10 more years, or do I get out and do something? So I decided to get out. I got my associate's degree, and since my wife is from Houston, we moved to Houston to be with family. And I got hired before I even got out of the military, and I got hired into oil and gas of all places. Mm-hmm. Figured I'd be at some medical clinic, doing something. Right. Nope. In oil and gas, and it was cool. You can climb. If you're determined and you show hard work, you can climb pretty high. I was a warehouse supervisor, and within 5 years, I went from a warehouse supervisor with a local company to an international company called National Oil Well Barco, where I'm a quality assurance manager. I'm higher fire authority, and I was responsible for like 12 different facilities across the nation and even overseas. And it was great. I had got my bachelor's degree using post 9/11 GI Bill. Things were on a fast track. So when I got to that point, that's when I knew I could do a few more things. But that was my military career into me being a veteran.
Yeah, so that's great. Just some of the things that I noticed as you were talking through this that obviously would prepare you to be a successful entrepreneur. All the deployments, all the uncertainty, the adaptability, and having to have the perseverance to work through all those different deployments and scenarios. Certainly, I'm sure played into your ability to be a successful entrepreneur.
Definitely, and it's not like the military doesn't prepare you for things. They need leaders. They want leaders, so they're going to put you through the courses. The more you make rank and show you're determined, and it depends on what you do with that knowledge. You could either take it as, oh, this sucks, and gaff it off, or you can be like, what, I will use this later on in my life. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna hold on to this stuff. So
yeah, that's a great point, because I think a lot of people lose that in the mix, right? They get it, they kind of get pulled into the doldrums of some of the stuff that you have to do as a military member, and don't really think about exactly what you said now, is taking that stuff and knowing yeah, I'll get through this and I'll use it in the future to my advantage. I'll be able to leverage that experience, and that becomes very instrumental, whether you're building a business or just, in any industry, working a normal job.
You're right. I mean, and it's keep those certifications. That's what I did. I didn't care what kind of certification I got. Anything, could be considered a credit for college or show that you have initiative, you have a drive, and that you have taken care of people. You have led people, you've managed people, depending on what you do in your career. So, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad to see that, you took the time over those different periods of time to get your degrees, because that's, again, another thing that as a member of the military, sometimes we forget that we need to be working on these over time. We may not be able to do it on our time and in our time when we really hope to do it, but when those opportunities present themselves, it's important to do sooner than later, because one of the things that I found with coaching veterans is the ones that didn't take advantage of that in the military, when they transition out, they kind of feel like they're a little bit behind the eight ball, right? They're struggling to keep up, and now they're in a college environment with people that are many years younger than them and with very distinctly different opinions and approaches to life, which makes it a very hard transition culturally.
It can, there could be a little bit of a sociological issue there, even psychological, where you feel like I can't mingle with these people. They don't get me.
Right.
And that, a lot of that can lead to a sense of wanting to quit and failure, and I'm screw this. I'm not even going to put myself in. They don't get me. I don't get this. I'm just going to go work at Pizza Hut for the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the worst, scenario to see, a veteran in, is, getting to that stage where, because they didn't plan and prepare ahead of time, that now they kind of, in some ways, give up on what their true potential is.
Yeah.
So,
and it wasn't easy. I'll tell you that, it wasn't easy. I got lucky at the tail end. But even before I got out, I had some pretty good leadership, and not everybody has that type of leadership that can help them prepare for these things. They're just like, hey, you're getting out. All right, bye.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that is a common thing I hear, is some people, and I was in that situation when I transitioned out after 8 years, is I happened to be one of the lucky ones that had great leadership and understood the value of me getting my education while I was in, and being able to pursue a career outside of the military. So, that's a great point. Sometimes you get that leadership that kind of gets that. Even if that leadership intends to stay to retirement, they understand that not everybody does. And so, yeah.
It's like, you were so, worried having these people under you reach certain levels underneath you while you're in. Okay, well, if they're going to get out, don't set them up for failure when they take that step out the door. By the time when I got out, like I said, I had a job. I had everything done for my VA disability. I went to 3 different TAPS classes. I had my degree. I mean, everything had transitioned over peachy, man. It was awesome. And I know, I even have family members, like my little brother. He didn't have that. So I know there's a lot of people that don't have that. And I think that needs to change. Yeah. I know that needs to change,
Right. Yep. No, I agree. And if you have to take advantage of those resources that are there and get all of that in that you can to make that transition successful. So, so you, as you were talking before, you had taken, the job in the oil and gas industry. Are you still in that now, or have you gone full-time entrepreneur?
Yeah, full-time entrepreneur, and it's wasn't truly to my choosing. Oil and gas kind of tanked in 2014-15, and I was laid off after about probably lasting 3 or 4 layoffs. And it was one of those, do I keep pursuing this oil and gas, or do I take these businesses that I had started up, and Counter-Strike was one of them, and really just do what I love? Yes, I worked in oil and gas to have a job and provide for my family, but Counter-Strike was something that it's a part of me. It's a piece of me. I put myself into this. And when you're passionate about that, like I wanted to make it, successful, of course. So
Right.
that's what I've been doing ever since.
All right, great. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to hear all about Brandon's experience in building his successful business. So we'll be right back. Landmark Life Coaching's vision is to be the nation's premier coaching partner for inspiring and empowering those in transition. They partner with courageous groundbreakers and transitioning veterans to create fulfilling and empowering futures that they desire. They have partnered with various entrepreneurs and transitioning veterans to leverage their core strengths and implement the framework for the future they always dreamed of. Could you or anyone you know benefit from a success partner to bring clarity to your future or their future? If so, please check out landmarklifecoaching.com for more information and charliemikepodcast.com for the Charlie Mike Podcast, showcasing the successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Okay, we're back with Brandon Buttrey with Counter-Strike Coffee, talking about his amazing path that he has been on since he was in the military, transitioned out to, a typical job to provide for his family, and then, decided to go into the entrepreneurial realm to follow his passion and do something he was, extremely committed to. So, Brandon, can you give us, a little overview of how you got into, maybe the coffee industry itself, right? From given that your background starting in the medical, then going to, the gas and oil, and now coffee.
Well, it's something where, coffee has always played a role in my life since high school. Oh man, I don't want to get up. I need some coffee, And it wasn't so much that I enjoy the coffee. I just knew I kind of needed it, but it grew on me, apart from drinking a Coke, or something like that, or a Red Bull. And with that, it tails into the military service. It's like a staple in our lives,
It is.
You make that field brew with whatever little coffee package you get in your MRE, some boot mud, and some sawdust. Who knows? And you put whatever you can in. You eat that. I mean, we used to dip the stuff, for crying out loud. We'd put hot sauce in it and dip it to stay awake.
Man.
So it's a part of a lot of people's lives. Some people go a little overboard. I can't really say overboard, but some are more enthusiastic about it than others. You have those connoisseurs, and I was never really a connoisseur. I just loved it, So when I realized that people were donating to this coffee mess, and I was actually making money from the donation pile, there was more money than that I was putting in. I'm like, this is a market, duh, there's something there. And I just like, what if I took my experience and just kind of, I really didn't like going into a Starbucks and being viewed by most of the individuals there, or like not even Starbucks. You could any type of coffee shop. It's more of a hipsterish type environment. Okay, I would get stared at like, oh God, here's some bearded veteran, some, whatever.
Right.
And it's like, I kind of wanted, I'm like, let me kind of branch off. It's, I totally appreciated, don't get me wrong, totally appreciated Starbucks and everything. They donated lots of coffee to South overseas, They provided jobs and all that stuff. But I'm like, let me kind of see what I can do where it's a different environment. Let me set up a different environment for, a patriotic, a military, a veteran type of community, and see where it goes. And I'm going to take all my humor and experience, and I'm just going to throw it in this motivational bag. But I want to sell really good tasting coffee. And I want it to have that side to it where it's, certified organic, shade grown, fair trade, small batched, it's roasted on a small farm out in Wharton, Texas, and it's very small batch, the flavorings, all natural, no sugars, no sweeteners and stuff. I want this to be a really good premium artisan roast of coffee that's just sold in this motivational high-speed bag that can crack anybody up, and just kind of let you have some of our experience. That's what I wanted to go with it.
Yeah, that's you have such a a very innovative marketing mind for this. Obviously, you really from A to Z, you knew what you wanted to the coffee to be, and you knew exactly the audience you wanted it for and how you wanted to present it based on who your audience is. So I think that's very important for our listeners to learn and understand that having that well-rounded mindset of how am I going to take this from A to Z. And I'm sure, like most entrepreneurs, you don't always know exactly every step before you hit it, but you have that real focus on who your real end customer is, so you can do everything to appease them and add value to their experience.
Exactly. And, I wanted to kind of approach different ways too, because getting to that level of starting the business, I had help. I sought other veterans that have started businesses, and there's organizations, here in Houston, there's Lone Star Veterans Association and Marine for Life program, and all this stuff. So it's like, okay, these guys who help me, how can I help them? These people that I listen to, and then I seek this stuff. So you can see some of the packaging, that it reflects that. I'm not just going to keep it Counter-Strike, all the way. No, I'm going to share that there's lots to the veteran community, and I'm going to share a little bit on each package. So
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, and that's a great point that you really can't do this in a vacuum. You have to build that network around you of people that have been there, done that, and surround yourself with those that have already reached a level of success that you're aspiring to, so that you can really leverage that and have solid relationships. And I think people need to understand too, as you're building those networks, even though those people have kind of surpassed you in the steps that they're at for the success of their business, you could still add value to their business in many ways. And
exactly.
So it's not just a one-way street, because I know a lot of young entrepreneurs or early entrepreneurs will say, I don't know what value I can add or what I can do for this individual. They're clearly past where I'm at. Well, they still need support in various ways, and so I wouldn't hesitate to push to first try to add value to them, and then the value will come back to you and try forward.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where that's kind of the beauty of a vetrepreneur. A solid vetrepreneur kind of looks at it in case, like if they were still in the military, like, look, I got this junior guy that wants to get started on something. I want to see him successful so he can add value to the community, his community. How can I help? That's a leader, a good leader in the military is going to do that too. How can he help, the community that he's in in his platoon or his fire team or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point too. That the community is so supportive, of helping to bring others along, and giving them the necessary resources to be successful, because it helps everybody. It's not just a one-way street when somebody does that. So yeah, having that community of other veteran entrepreneurs is critical, because that's what we're used to in the military. Like you said, there was always somebody above us and somebody helping to bring us up through the ranks, and so that just continues into the veteran community because it's ingrained in everybody that that's what you should do.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what advice would you give other aspiring combat veterans, veteranpreneurs, on the things that they must do to prepare for this journey, right? What are some of the things that you did that, when you look back, you're like, I'm glad I did the following, right? Is there anything in particular that just kind of stood out?
Yeah, man, like I just kind of laid everything out. I'm like, okay, what do I need to get started? Who do I need to know to get started? And what do I need? What are the needs? That's the biggest thing. But my main concern too was branding. I want to have something that's like, bow, designing, stuff like that. And you can pay someone to build you a logo, but like I worked with a company called Tactical SHIT. I don't know if you're allowed cussing on this podcast, but
yeah, no, that's the best way there.
Okay. Yeah. So with that, like with those guys, they helped me, get some of this stuff taken off on the side. And my logo is 2 operators, right? They got guns up, and I was just playing with images. I took silhouettes, and I split the image and kind of brought it together. And I'm like, man, that kind of looks like a skull. And then I showed him. He goes, dude, that's cool. Let me play with it. And then he put this skull through it with his software program, whatever. And then the skull operator was born. That's the logo.
Yeah.
So it's what do you want to do? What do you need? And, do you want to give back to the veteran community, or who in the veteran community do you need to seek in order to reach your short-term goals? Because you got to, list out those short-term and those long-term goals. It's crucial. Yeah. And that's the best thing I did. And once I knew I'm like, okay, I've got designs and verbiage for three different roasts of coffee. I've got a logo. I've got plenty more ideas. Okay, this guy's going to help me with this website. These people are going to help me with the packaging. Coffee, I can get roasted here. Okay, let's put it together. So it was scary, all right? But also, you have to also think about money, all right? That it sucks, but you have to. I started it with $1,000 that I took from my 401k when I left a company, right? And then what I did is I was able to get things started and then do a pre-order where individuals will understand that, look, it's going to be a few weeks, but you can go ahead and pre-order now. And it was overwhelming, the pre-orders actually. And with that came the money that I kept turning back over. And like I said, I didn't take any money for myself because I needed to build the company. But seeking also something that I didn't do that I would recommend is just, funding. How are you going to fund this? And do you need more capital than you really know? It's hard. Do you want an investor that's going to take part of your company, or do you want to take debt? Can you start this yourself? Do you even need money? Can you do everything off of a pre-order? Or, will your vendors wait until you get paid? What's your payment terms? It's a lot to think of, but thinking about that capital and funding your company is very essential.
Yeah, no, those are some really good points. That's one thing, some entrepreneurs forget is I got to make this sustainable, because people aren't just going to come and buy my product right off the bat just because it's out there. And so you need to build that base of loyal customers that come and, buy, and then they come back and buy more, and they just continue to be that repeat customer. And some, will start out and then they realize, this isn't sustainable with the money I have. And so you need exactly what you said, to have those thoughts, at least down as far as, okay, if this isn't sustainable, how do I get more money? What is my preferred avenue, rather than be in the situation and be like, oh crap, what do I do? And then you're making a decision based out of scarcity rather than abundance, and so that's not good.
Because I know another thing I did too to keep flow coming in is, when I wasn't getting a lot of the website hits and people purchasing online, I took my inventory and I went to a farmer's market. It was like $20, for a day, but that also was getting brand recognition into my community. Okay. And, Houston, and I'm Northwest Houston in the Tomball, Cypress area. I was at a Tomball farmer's market, and it went over swimmingly. They loved it. People would come out of the way and they Christmas presents. And, eventually I, went from 3 roasts of coffee to coffee mugs, T-shirts, 3 more roasts of coffee, other, apparel and patch covers and all this stuff. I was able to really expand, but, now I'm at that point that I'm in a growing pain. I have to take on debt or release some equity to obtain capital to really make this thing grow. I need roasters. I need K-cup presses. I need facility, distribution, employees. That's where this has gone. So now I'm at that next phase,
Yeah, it's probably a lot to take in and process and do the right thing, but it's when it comes to the avenues that a business can go down, it's the problem you want to have, right?
Yeah. I will.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll say another thing too, that I wrote out like an executive summary for my business. I did a business battle here in Houston, but I would highly recommend right from the get-go, you get a business plan done right away.
Mm-hmm.
At least if you don't have your financials, at least get something in there with what you want to do in your plan. That way you can continually revamp it as time goes on, because that's what I'm doing now. I am gearing this towards where I can take on debt or investors and stuff, but I'm having to go back and put in a lot of my financials that I didn't have in there, and costs and all this other stuff, and it's just taking up a lot of time.
Yeah, I bet that's a great thought, because having some people get too tied up in the business plan, but I think you need to have something down and then evolve it like you're doing over time, because things will change, focus will change, and so that's great. So as we're running out of time here, I wanted to give you a chance to give our listeners some information on how they can find out more about your business and get in contact with you if need be.
Definitely. So www.counterstrikecoffee.com. All right, that's the website. We're on Facebook. Just look up Counterstrike Coffee. All right. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. I do YouTube videos. Google page, Twitter, is another big one. And we've got lots of stuff going on. I'd like to see a lot of people just at least watch us how we're growing. You'll see how this thing goes. I got the NRA convention next week in Atlanta, right? Going to be big. There's possibilities of, doing different TV shows and radio shows and all this stuff. And what is Counter-Strike going to do next? If you don't buy the coffee, at least you can kind of see and grow with us,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for being on the show, and most importantly, thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, yeah, man. No problem. I enjoyed it.
Remember, loyal listeners, we are the home of the free because of the brave.
Thank you for tuning in to Charlie Mike Podcast with Dwayne Paro. Our objective is to bring successful veteranpreneurs to help inspire and provide insight into what helped them become successful, with the hopes you can take away various strategies you can implement in your entrepreneurial journey. Visit us on iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and let us know what you thought of the show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hoorah!